In 1862, the Battle of Antietam witnessed one of the bloodiest days of the American Civil War. In a single day, nearly 23,000 soldiers were either killed or wounded. This camp was where the 14th Indiana Volunteers treated wounded Confederate soldiers. It was a scene where wounded soldiers from both the North and the South were cared for in the same place. The battlefield was not just a site of conflict, but also a stage where humanity was tested. Here, the lines between enemies blurred, and the primary mission became helping the survivors. As you look at these tents, pause and reflect. If you were there that day, what would you feel? Could you hear the agonizing cries of the wounded soldiers or witness the tireless efforts of the exhausted volunteers? The year 1864 left deep scars on the history of Fredericksburg. These soldiers, sitting in front of the Sanitary Commission building, had just emerged from the Battle of the Wilderness. Wounded bodies, weary souls, and the indelible marks of war. Following the Battle of the Wilderness, the Sanitary Commission became a refuge where both Union and Confederate soldiers were treated. Here, wounded soldiers clung to life under the care of volunteer nurses like Abby Hopper Gibbons. Abby, who came all the way from New York, worked not only to heal physical wounds, but also to mend the emotional pain of those who suffered. Bull Run, Virginia. Bull Run was the site of one of the first major battles of the American Civil War. Beginning in 1861, this conflict claimed the lives of hundreds of soldiers, followed by a second major battle in the same region in 1862. During those dark days of 1862, countless lives were lost on this soil. These graves stand as silent witnesses to the sacrifice of young soldiers who paid the ultimate price of war. Sometimes a photograph is more powerful than a history book. This image captures Sherman's men stationed at a Confederate fort in Atlanta in 1864. The Battle of Atlanta was one of the turning points of the American Civil War. General William T. Sherman launched a massive siege to capture this city, a key logistical hub for the Confederacy. In this scene, Sherman's soldiers are seen at a captured Confederate fort. The fall of Atlanta shifted the course of the war and ultimately paved the way for the Union's victory. Each tombstone whispers the stories of thousands who joined the war at a young age, leaving their dreams behind. The Battle of Bull Run was one of the first major conflicts of the American Civil War. Henry House became a focal point of this battle. During the First Battle of Bull Run in 1861, this house served as the epicenter of the conflict and was completely destroyed by heavy bombardment. Its owner, Judith Henry, an elderly woman who remained in her home, tragically lost her life during the clash. This site remains a poignant reminder of the war's devastating impact on civilian lives. This solitary grave marks the end of a life once filled with hopes and dreams. It holds the story of a soldier who found eternal rest on this dusty field of the Battle of Antietam. The Battle of Antietam witnessed one of the bloodiest days of the American Civil War. On September 17, 1862, over 22,000 soldiers were killed, wounded, or went missing in this harrowing conflict. In the chaos of the battlefield, every mingled with the cries of the wounded. The Battle of Fredericksburg was one of the bloodiest confrontations of the American Civil War. In this photograph, injured soldiers are seen resting in a shaded area after the fighting, seeking treatment and recovery. These areas were often used as makeshift medical stations for emergency care. Post-battle scenes like this hold countless stories of both suffering and solidarity. The Battle of Nashville stands as a pivotal turning point in the history of the American Civil War. The Confederate Army sought refuge in these trenches for one final defense against Union forces. However, during the climactic clashes on December 16, 1864, this area became a scene of intense struggle and devastation. The photograph vividly captures life in the trenches during those desperate days, as well as the ever-present proximity of death. With every step, one could feel both the enemy and the haunting ghosts of the past. The violence of war consumed not only lives but also the tools of battle. In 1862, Yorktown became one of the most strategically significant locations of the American Civil War. This battery was at the heart of the Confederate defenses. However, an explosion destroyed both the equipment and the soldiers stationed nearby. This image serves as a reminder that war was so chaotic that even technology could not always be relied upon. A silent reminder of destruction, this battered and smoke-filled wreck lays on the shore like the final breath of the rebel ram Virginia. Built as an ironclad warship to bolster the strength of the Confederate Navy, the rebel ram Virginia was a formidable vessel. However, the intensity of the war and the superior tactics of the opposition led even this massive ship to its defeat. This smoky ruin symbolizes the heavy damage sustained during battle and the ship's inevitable demise. In 1862, this field hospital at Savage Station sheltered hundreds of wounded soldiers during the 7 days' battles. Each tent and open space represented the thin line between life and death. In this scene, doctors and nurses worked tirelessly with limited resources, striving to achieve the impossible. The brutality of the Civil War was deeply felt not only on the battlefield, but also within these makeshift hospitals. This small wooden building holds the dreams, hopes, and struggles of hundreds. Smith's Farm, located in South Carolina during one of the most tumultuous periods of the Civil War in 1862, became a refuge for formerly enslaved individuals seeking freedom. Here, they worked processing cotton as they tried to rebuild their lives. However, this pursuit of freedom brought immense challenges. Limited resources and an uncertain future forced these individuals to fight every day for survival. This scene echoes a moment that would be remembered throughout history. Here, decisions that would shape the nation's destiny were made. After the Battle of Antietam, Abraham Lincoln and General George McClellan met at this war camp in Maryland. With the nation divided between North and South, this meeting marked a strategic turning point. Caught between McClellan's hesitations and Lincoln's patience, this dialogue influenced the course of the war and laid the groundwork for the decisions that would lead to the abolition of slavery. These narrow and frigid trenches were the dark starting points of a nation's rebirth. During the 1862 Peninsula Campaign, the Yorktown trenches became one of the critical conflict zones between the North and the South. Under the leadership of General McClellan, the Union Army sought to capture this strategic position to advance toward Richmond. However, Confederate forces stubbornly held their defensive line in these trenches. The brutal conditions of this conflict revealed the savagery of war and the profound impact of military strategies on human lives. Here are the hands that planted the first seeds of freedom. This image, captured in 1864 at the Dutch Gap Front in Virginia, represents one of the most critical years of the American Civil War. Black Americans, serving in the Union Army, fought not only for their own freedom, but also to shape the future of the nation. Dutch Gap was a strategic point in this struggle, and these soldiers left a lasting mark on history with their determination to be part of the fight. Here, it's not just soldiers, but heroes fighting for life itself. The year 1864 was one of the most challenging periods of the American Civil War. This field hospital in Petersburg, Virginia, bore the devastating impacts of the conflict. The surgeons in the photograph worked tirelessly to treat countless wounded soldiers with almost no medical equipment. Infections, severe blood loss, and inadequate anesthesia made their work even more difficult. These surgeons were the unsung heroes of the war. Richmond, Virginia, was one of the most significant hubs of the American Civil War. In the war's final days, fires set during the city's evacuation reduced everything to ashes. This scene dates to just a week before General Robert E. Lee's surrender. These ruins serve as a stark reminder of a nation's costly struggle to reunite and rebuild. Drury's Bluff, Virginia, was a strategic point during the American Civil War. In this 1865 image, a large transport wagon is seen alongside a soldier. These wagons played a vital role in transporting supplies and wounded soldiers. The battles fought around this area had a profound impact on the war's ultimate outcome. More than just a vehicle, this wagon stands as a monument carrying thousands of untold stories. Echoing through the dusty roads of Texas is a history of bravery and resilience. Terry's Texas Rangers, a portrait of freedom and courage. Established in 1861, the 8th Texas Cavalry Regiment, popularly known as Terry's Texas Rangers, was a group of volunteer soldiers who fought valiantly for the Confederacy during the American Civil War. These warriors set out to defend their homeland's independence, leaving behind a legacy that is both legendary and controversial. Each of these soldiers carried a story of individual heroism, becoming symbols of Texas itself. One of the silent heroes of the Union Army, a face fighting for freedom. This photograph shows an African-American soldier who fought in the Union Army in 1861. During the American Civil War, these individuals became symbols of freedom, witnessing some of history's most grueling struggles both physically and mentally. They fought to protect their own freedom and that of future generations. These brave soldiers, in the shadow of war, helped reshape the future of a nation. When I look at these young faces, I see courage that has yet to fully grasp the brutal reality of war, but stands determined to change the future of the nation. These young soldiers of the Union Army fought shoulder to shoulder in the battles between the North and the South. This moment captures one of the rare instances where black and white youth came together. Some fought to defend freedom, others to preserve the Union. For them, this was more than just a war. It was a fight for a greater ideal. Standing beside me at Antietam are men who were the silent heroes shaping the destiny of a nation. Without them, I wonder if this country could still stand today. After the Battle of Antietam in 1862, Abraham Lincoln met with his military commanders. This meeting was crucial not only for strategic evaluation, but also for boosting the morale of the troops. Lincoln's leadership extended beyond managing the war. It kept alive the people's faith in the ideal of peace. While Antietam is remembered as the bloodiest single-day battle in history, here Lincoln was not just a leader, but a father figure trying to unite the divided heart of a nation. The silence at City Point feels like the calm before the greatest storms. This is City Point, Virginia, one of the most strategic locations of the Civil War. At the heart of the Secret Service, these young scouts prepared for dangerous missions. This land constantly redefined the boundaries of betrayal and bravery day after day. A bridge connects more than just two banks. It ties together the fate of a war. This is Tennessee, home to a fortified bridge built over the Cumberland River, which became a strategic point during the Civil War. Nashville served as a crucial logistical and military hub throughout the conflict. This bridge was used to control river crossings and transport troops and supplies. Its reinforced structure provided protection for Union forces against attacks. However, every crossing was fraught with danger, as enemy patrols and the constant threat of sabotage loomed along the river. Waiting at this dock felt like experiencing the quietest yet heaviest moments of war. Cox's Landing, Virginia, was a significant location during the Civil War, serving as a site for both battles and negotiations. The flag of truce ship would arrive here, and temporary peace talks were held between the opposing sides. These moments were vital not only for ending the war, but also for addressing critical matters such as prisoner exchanges and diplomatic negotiations. The calmness of the river stood in stark contrast to the chaotic nature of the war. Within the stone walls of Fort Sumter echoed the sounds of one of the most momentous beginnings in American history. Located in Charleston Harbor, South Carolina, Fort Sumter is known as the site where the Civil War was ignited. The initial attack in 1861 marked the official start of the conflict. When the fort fell into Confederate hands, it became both a strategic point and a symbol of the fierce divide between the North and the South. Inside, the scene vividly revealed the devastating effects of relentless bombardment and battles. Railroads were the lifelines of the war, and restoring them was a battle for survival. This railway in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, suffered significant damage after the Battle of Stones River at the end of 1862. This strategic line was crucial for logistics on both the Union and Confederate sides. Repairing the railroad was vital not only for the continuity of the war effort, but also to meet the needs of the local population struggling to survive. The quiet moments in the trenches reveal the resolve of leaders bearing the heaviest burdens of war. Fort Brady in Virginia was a strategic defensive position during the American Civil War. In this scene, 3 officers from the 1st Connecticut Heavy Artillery stand together, monitoring enemy lines and preparing for impending threats. Fort Brady played a central role in efforts to control the James River, underscoring its significance in the broader conflict. At the rear entrance of Fort Corcoran, a sense of determination echoes in the quiet moment. Located in Arlington, Virginia, Fort Corcoran was a critical defensive point during the American Civil War. It played a vital role in the strategy to protect Washington, D.C. This scene captures a moment at the fort's rear entrance, where soldiers meticulously maintain order and security. Fort Corcoran was one of the key positions in the Union Army's Northern Virginia campaign and an indispensable hub for logistical support during the war. This chaotic scene at Port Royal reveals how war cornered people into desperate situations. Located in Virginia, Port Royal served as a strategic evacuation and transit point during the American Civil War. The floating bridge seen in the photograph was used to transport troops and supplies. People who had left behind their homes, safety, and perhaps their entire past hoped to quickly cross the river to reach secure areas. These types of bridges were vital for ensuring swift mobility and escaping war zones. The cold face of war seeped from the tents of Morris Island. Fort Wagner, located on Morris Island, was the site of one of the significant battles of the American Civil War. A federal garrison was stationed here, using it as a strategic base to both defend the fort and maintain control over the South Carolina coastline. These tents stood as silent witnesses to the soldiers' struggle for survival under harsh conditions. Rising along the Potomac River, the Georgetown Aqueduct stands as both an engineering marvel and a symbol of resilience throughout history. Located on the Virginia side, this aqueduct was one of the 19th century's engineering masterpieces, facilitating transportation across the Potomac River. In the background, the silhouette of Georgetown University adds depth to the scene. During the Civil War, this area served as a strategic crossing point, utilized for both military and commercial purposes. Today, the aqueduct remains a part of Georgetown's modern identity as well as its history. Nestled in nature, this camp was the starting point for volunteers heading into war. The 35th New York Volunteer Regiment played a key role in various missions throughout the Civil War. This camp served as both a training ground and a sanctuary to maintain soldiers' morale. The orderly arrangement of tents symbolized discipline and organization. These camps felt like a brief respite before the storm, as soldiers carried on with their daily lives while mentally preparing for the battles ahead. Life under the shadow of war and family togetherness in the tents. The tent life of the 31st Pennsylvania Infantry Regiment included not just soldiers but also their families, who shared the hardships of war. Such scenes reveal the solidarity and struggle for survival behind the front lines during the Civil War. Women and children provided both support and morale for the soldiers. Daily tasks like cooking and sewing offered small moments of normalcy amidst the harsh realities of war. A place where the strategic plans of war were written in water, Dutch Gap Canal. The Dutch Gap Canal was an engineering marvel created along the James River during the American Civil War. In 1864, It was excavated under the direction of General Benjamin Butler to bypass Confederate defenses and create an alternative route to Richmond. However, the canal was not completed until after the war. This site highlights the strategic complexity and resource intensity of the conflict. A portrait of a sailor sharing the harsh fate of the seas, a sailor aboard the USS New Hampshire. The USS New Hampshire was a significant ship that served the Union Navy during the American Civil War. Originally built as a warship, it was primarily used for transport and blockade operations during the war. Sailors in the Navy endured harsh weather, long voyages, and constant danger. This sailor stands as a silent representative of the unseen heroes of the war.